Okay, so today we're doing the Pruning Shears of revision, and thanks for tuning in, Cyber Kings. I'm glad you got to be here during the stream. So it's my second time doing this lecture, and I will do it many more times because I agree with Neville that I do think it is the thing he's going to be remembered for. Because as far as I know, and if you know someone who has also discussed this idea in this way as being literally true and possible and the way reality operates, let me know because as far as I know, he's the only one who talks about it this way. When I was searching up revision, because I wanted to see if I could find audio of any revision lectures, and from an initial Google, I saw a lot of contemporary people talking about revision, and a couple of them called it a technique. It's not a technique, it's a facet of reality. It's a fact of how this world actually operates. And having someone present it that way and discuss it that way is truly revolutionary. It upends our entire framework of the world. So that's why I think it's so incredibly important. And then for my thoughts of the day, which will be in top left of the screen, let me see if I point up. Yeah. So when I was thinking more about revision, I was thinking, well, what if instead of having to, especially as if once you're later in life, you're going to feel like, wow, this is a really overgrown garden. It would actually take me years just to go through each thing and revise it, because you'd be revising your entire history to now. Well, if I'm God and anything's possible to God and anything's possible to mine, how about I make the decision that I've automatically deleted all unpleasant memories and automatically replace them with only the best, most wonderful, most beautiful, most joyous memories. So when Daphne was first on the show, she had disclosed that revision for her had been quite problematic and had literally kind of caused her to re-traumatize herself because she was trying to revise traumatic memories. And so I think for a lot of circumstances, you're not going to know how you could even, there's no way to change the incident that occurred was so awful that to see it differently would be quite difficult. So what I would suggest instead when you come across those, like especially if it involved a person, would be to take that person or someone else where you're discussing the person that the incident happened with, and if not the incident, talk about them differently or have a better experience with them. I know the example I had given before was if someone had bullied you when you were a kid, to instead imagine a scene where you guys were friends and you were playing together and having fun together. Now, that's a pretty simple example, but if it was something a little bit more involved, like with a family member, if you could at least imagine having a conversation with another family member about them, where you're discussing them in a positive light and agreeing with them and feeling that this person was actually always kind to you, that might be helpful. Now, one I haven't worked out yet, though I've tried it a couple times, is I've been trying to revise a car accident I was in a couple years ago that caused me a knee injury that has persisted for, I think it's coming up on a decade now. And so I've tried a couple different ways to revise it. I've tried that we went home that night without an accident in the car I was in and in a different car. So far, neither way seems to have worked. However, I do also have a strong mental insistence that my knee has trouble. And so it might be just that strong day-to-day insistence is overriding what I'm doing in revision, because I'm still feeling strongly this actual concept, self-concept of having a bad knee. And then I also realized that I needed to revise, because I had a re-injury incident. I needed to revise the re-injury. And the way I tried that I don't think was great. It wasn't a good scene. And so that hasn't produced success either. But I'm going to keep persisting, keep thinking of maybe better ways I could do it, or just really feeling into not having a bad knee anymore. Um, but yeah, when it comes to accidents, I don't have the best advice on that. I mean, like I said, the lady who, I don't know if he's going to give the example here, but the lady who revised an accident that was like nearly 40 years ago, she did just revise the incident where I guess she had fallen from a swing and like she jumped and then, landed the wrong way and messed up her hip. And instead, when she revised it, she had herself land successfully. So it's very particular. You're going to have to spend some time with yourself and work out the best way and ask for the best way to be presented to you, or like this thought suggests, ask for it to happen automatically. If there's like a whole group of years, 1, 2, even 10 years that were just really bad for you, decide that actually those were the best years of my life, and I'm allowed to have great memories from that time come up. A friend of mine that I talked to about manifesting, she's in like a little mini group that I made a couple years ago. That, well, actually, a viewer made the group, and then we still continue with it. She had success doing just thought only revisions about a time in her life when she was sick and unable to attend school, but there was something going on at school that she really wanted to be there for. So she decided that she would have been at school that day, and she had memories automatically come up. And the sort of memory of not being at school that day like faded, where the memory of being there became more stronger and more real. So you can have automatic shifts in memory as well. Okay. And if you think about it, being that you are shifting realities all the time anyway, you are always a new version of you, a new body of beliefs. Well, you can shift into a new you that has different memories. I mean, when you revise itself, that's what you're doing anyway. So you could make that shift first and then have the memories change. You could change the memory and shift into the new you, or shift into the new you and have the memories change. Either way, it's up to you. It really is up to you, and that's what Neville boldly asserts, is that your experience of reality, especially and including the past, is entirely your prerogative. Okay, the Pruning Shears of Revision from 1954. This morning's subject is the pruning shears of revision. I firmly believe that if you will wisely and daily use the pruning shears of revision, that you will find there is no objective beyond your ability to realize. And I mean that seriously. No objective beyond your ability to realize. When I was a boy of 7, a lady said to me, I have had a vision concerning you. I'll make it now very, very clear to you. I do not know what it is you're going to do, but I've been shown you will do something that through the centuries after you are gone, man will not undo it. I can see it, and through the centuries you will grow in stature long after you have gone. And then 3 men will be mentioned in hundreds of years to come, and you will be one of the 3 when something is discussed that was done for man. I feel that this morning's subject, that this could be it. That if I never said another word and you heard it and believed it and really used it, this would be the planting that would spread from us here, that tomorrow could not undo. The thing you can't revise is revision itself, for it is magic, this pruning shears of revision. It really is not only the daily achievement of objectives, but if you do it daily, it will awaken in you the Spirit of Jesus, which is continual forgiveness of sin. It's we have the little graphic. Are you feeding your pig? Down in the there part of the screen, and that is, are you feeding your pig? Because pig is equivalent. A pig is equivalent symbol to Jesus. And also, for anyone who doesn't know, when Neville talks about sin, he doesn't mean a moralistic failing. He means not meeting your objective, or knowing how to manifest it and not doing it. So you're not moving in mind into the thing you desired. And if it's someone else who told you they want something and you're continuing to believe they don't have it, that's also sin. So sin is simply not having what you want and not doing what you know you should do mentally in order to obtain what you want. In this teaching, and forgiveness is also forgetting. In this teaching, the sinner should always go free. You will never condemn him, for when Spirit is awake in you, you will realize in him there is no condemnation, only forgiveness. And forgiveness is not as man of this world thinks when he omits the actual execution of his revenge. What we mean by forgiveness, the identification of the other that we would forgive with the ideal that the other wants to embody in the world. And so we do to him what we would expect or would like the world to do to us. So whatever I myself would like to embody, that is the vision I must hold of every man that I meet in my world. That no man is to be discarded. Every man is to be redeemed, and my life is the process whereby that redemption is brought about. And I do it by simply identifying the other with the ideal I want to externalize in my world. Now we go back to the 2nd of Genesis. It is said, "And God placed man in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it." Now when you read the story, you think it happened thousands of years ago. I have come to tell you it is now. You are now in the Garden of Eden, and you think you are shut out or banished. You are in it, and the garden is your mind. But you need, like every gardener, you need pruning shears. For you have slept, as you are told in that 2nd chapter. Having slept, weeds have appeared in the garden, and the weeds are revealing themselves by the conditions and the circumstances of your life. For your garden is always projecting itself on this grain of space, and you can see by looking carefully at your world what you allow to grow in the garden of God. But you have a mission, you have a purpose. It is not to amass a fortune. You can do it if you want to. It's not to be famous. It's not to be some mighty power, but simply to tend the garden of God. That's your purpose. You are placed in the garden to dress it and to keep it, that only the lovely things grow in the garden of God. Now every man in the world is rooted in you who look out and see that world. Every man is rooted in me. He ends in me as I am rooted in and end in God. Because he is rooted in me, he cannot bear other than the nature the root allows. So he is in me, and any changes desired in the outer world can be brought about only if I change the source of the thing I see growing in my world. In other words, people are only going to... Your concept of reality, your concept of yourself is always going to influence what you experience from other people and what happens to them. So if you totally exclude it from the realm of possibility, it's generally not going to happen to people you know. But it's also very individualized. So this one thing I've noticed is if I really can't see someone doing well, it's going to be hard for me to forgive them that state. I'm going to sin related to them for a long, long time. But then also that inability comes from my insistence that there is that inability, right? So if I decide and really feel into, oh, well, it's easy for me to see anybody, not just certain people, but anybody doing better. It's easy for me to give success to anyone. Then it's going to be easy for me to see them doing well, and then therefore very quick manifestation for that person. You see yonder fields. Don't be surprised when you see sesamum. The sesamum was sesamum, the corn was corn. The silence and the darkness knew. So is a man's fate born. So don't judge it, because you are the source of the thing that you are beholding. Now turn within and prune it by using these pruning shears of revision. Now, this is how we do it. At the end of my day, I review the day. I don't judge it, I simply review it. I look over the entire day, all the episodes, all the events, all the conversations, all the meetings. And then as I see it clearly in my mind's eye, I rewrite it. I rewrite it and make it conform to the ideal day I wish I had experienced. I take scene after scene and rewrite it, revise it, and having revised my day, then in my imagination I relive that day, the revised day, and I do it over and over in my imagination until this seeming imagined state begins to take on to me the tones of reality. It seems that it's real, that I actually did experience it, and I have found from experience that these revised days, if really lived, will change my tomorrows. When I meet people tomorrow that today disappointed me, they will not tomorrow, for in me I have changed the very nature of that being, and having changed him, he bears witness tomorrow of the change that took place within me. It is my duty to take this garden and really make it a garden by daily using the pruning shears of revision. I know from experience it will not only bring about these objectives and bring about these changes, but the glorious thing is it awakens in you who use it the Spirit of Jesus, and you find yourself then not justifying, but forgiving. And you will realize that freedom and forgiveness are indissolubly linked. You cannot be free and not forgive, for the one that you would bind and judge and condemn anchors you by your own judgment of him, for he is in you. And so by identifying him with the ideal you want to really realize, you free yourself. You are told, forgive and you shall be forgiven. Forgive not and you shall not be forgiven. It's automatic. It can't be otherwise, for the whole springs from you who behold it. And as you begin to practice it, the very Spirit arouses itself within you, and you know that you are he that others spoke about and thought lived 2,000 years ago. All right, so Neville's using words that I think we might put other connotations onto that he doesn't necessarily. Like when it comes to forgiveness, and he's already defined he's already told you how he defines forgiveness not long ago in this lecture. But so when he's talking about forgiving other people, he's literally saying you're not letting the shit slide. He is saying by forgiving them, what you're doing is forgetting what they did because you've replaced it with something you would have preferred. Whether it's someone who slighted you or it's someone who didn't do anything wrong towards you, but they just said they needed something and they insisting they don't currently have it. So you would forget, like if you have a friend who wants a job, who's unemployed, you would forgive them their state of unemployment. If they told you that day, yeah, I've been looking, I still can't find anything, you would, when you're revising your day, instead hear them telling you, I got this new job, I love it. Okay? That's it. That's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is, joy for mourning, beauty for ashes. It's replacing what you didn't like with what you preferred. It's not holding a hidden resentment. Okay? Forgiveness is actually forgetting what happened that you didn't like because you mentally replaced it with something you do like. Okay, so if you had a fight with someone, it's not, oh, well, I'm cooled down now, it's okay. It's imagining you didn't have a fight, and instead you had a great conversation and they agreed with you. Whatever you fought about, you guys had a quick, easy, pleasant chat and they agreed with you. That's forgiveness. This is such a radical view of these things because in most spaces you're told basically to take the hit on the chin and live with it or learn to live with it. And this is telling you no. If someone pissed you off, change what they said. Change what they did. If someone you know is having a hard time, see them not having a hard time. See them doing well and doing better. It's a totally radically different view of looking at how you experience reality. Because in one case, you're told to accept things that suck. And here you're told if it sucks, it's your fault, you need to fix it. Okay? So when you realize it through actual knowledge. You know it, no argument. You don't tell others, you know that you are he. He's talking about being Jesus. And then you will, or being God. And then you will read the words in the ninth of Hebrews. He appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And you will know you are the one that put away sin by the sacrifice of self. And by the sacrifice of self, it's not being a brave one who throws himself in the line of fire to protect a brother. It doesn't mean one who gives his body to be burned, one who is nailed on a cross. But the self of man is the sum total of all that man believes and consents to be true. So that's the self that is sacrificed. In other words, you're giving up, you're destroying the self, that the mindset that would have accepted the unwanted thing. You're giving up the memory, the experience of the unwanted thing. You're refusing to be the person that holds that in place in your reality. So if you had a conversation where your friend told you that they want a job and they're having trouble finding one, you're sacrificing that version of you that heard and mentally consented to that conversation so fully that you now have it as a memory. You're giving up on that version of you and instead moving into the version of you that heard them tell you they have a new job that they love. I heard of this lady, and she would make some man a wonderful wife, and yet she is unwed. She desires to be the companion of a great noble person, but she is unwed. I heard that. That becomes a part of myself. That's my knowledge. I must sacrifice that self. That aspect of my being be as happy as I am, and those in my world are. For that's the self I must sacrifice and put away sin. For sin to the mystic means missing the mark. It doesn't mean the violation of certain codes, unless of course you have a mark and the violation fell short. But sin to the mystic is simply having an aim in life and failing to realize it. So when you miss the mark, you have sinned. So he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And knowing that himself is only all that he consents to, all that he accepts, all that he believes to be true, then what am I believing concerning that one? He is unemployed and can't find a job. I'm believing it. Now put away that sin where he is missing the mark, and then by putting away of the sin, I do it only by the sacrifice of myself, and myself is that belief. So now I revise. I can't say, well, I will no longer believe he is unemployed. I believe he's employed. I do it by the pruning shears of revision. I bring him before my mind's eye and I congratulate him on his good fortune because he is now gainfully employed. I allow him to accept my congratulations because I do not see a man unemployed. I see him employed, and he knows he is in my mind's eye, for in that state I have pruned him from the unemployed state, and once more reshape the branch that grows in the garden of God. Tomorrow people will see him as they could not have seen him before that pruning took place within me, and he will be gainfully employed. When you're revising, you're creating a belief. You're creating something that's going to become a belief/fact. Eventually, I want to do, for a chat time, explanation, like sort of give my personal definitions of terms like thought, assumption, belief, and fact. Because the whole point of it's going to be, you need to realize that it's all just your thoughts. Whatever intensity you've assigned to it, whether you think it's a physical object out here in space, or it's something that you've just been convinced is true for the last 50 years, it's still equivalent to any other thought you can have right now. The whole world is just thoughts. There's nothing actually more solidly true than anything else. So when you're revising, you're creating a new fact, and you're starting that process in your mind, because that's where it all starts. So if you're giving your friend a new job, you're making that fact in your mind now. If you're marrying someone off who has told you they've been single for 5 years and they just want to get married, you're making that a fact in your mind. It's going to be a fact eventually in the screen of space, but it started in your mind. And if you look back on your life, you will see that you were doing this the whole time. It's just that you just didn't know you were doing it. But ask yourself to be shown those memories. I mean, once you know that you're doing it, that's the only point at which you start having questions about, well, how do I do it? You didn't have questions about how you were doing it when you were just doing it automatically. But because you didn't know you were doing it, you allowed a bunch of things to happen that you otherwise wouldn't want. And that's what Neville talks about when it comes to all these weeds, all this stuff we have to, like just delete, really just toss out because it was accidental, and it was just totally unwanted stuff because we didn't realize we were doing it. That one is unwell. You prune that branch. Well, I mean, disease is one of them, right? Disease is a big one. Like, you didn't know that wasn't something you had to consent to and allow to persist in the garden. These spring allergies, what I need to prune, that one is unwell. You prune that branch. You don't accept one thing in the world as final unless it conforms to the ideal you want to realize in the world. I like that. You don't accept one thing in the world as final unless it conforms to the ideal you want to realize in the world. But you do it daily. If you do not prune it daily, you will get out of the habit. Then weeds will grow. Every man who really is a gardener, who calls himself a gardener in the garden of God, for every day is the opportunity to really prune the tree, this wonderful tree. And so everyone that you meet is a branch rooted in the vine that you are, and you are that special tree in the garden of God. A tree bearing life, a tree bearing fruit for the food of the nations. You are that one. If you take me seriously tonight do not let the sun descend upon any vexation of the day. Just look at it. Don't deny it. Don't duck it. Look at it that you may prune it and then reshape it. Take the conversations with your friends today. Were they pleasant? Were they arguments? No matter what it is, were they negative? Then rewrite the script and just imagine the conversation to have taken place. Then now you are rewriting for the first time. And it will take place, for everything in your world that you behold, though it appears without, it is within, in your imagination. And this wonderful imagination of yours is Christ Jesus. Imagination is the actual habitation of every created thing. No matter what you see in the world, it springs from your imagination. So that's where you go. That's the workshop, the Garden of God. And now you have a mission. You have a purpose in life. It's a noble purpose because you have been selected to really become the chief gardener in the Garden of God. And in the garden, you must have pruning shears, and pruning shears is revision. You simply revise. And as you revise the day, you repeal the day. For the day is not slipping into the past. It does not recede as people think. It is always advancing into the future to confront you, either pruned or in some strange weed-like state. So it's entirely up to us. I hope that every man and woman here today will take me seriously and start this day pruning your garden, pruning your mind. I know before I leave the city in a matter of 2 weeks that you will be able to tell me of the new things that spring in your world or that spring from the prune tree that is your own lovely imagination. You try it, then you will know what Blake meant when he said, in heaven, the only art of living is forgetting and forgiving. The only art of living is complete forgetfulness by putting something in its place. No vacuum, but putting something in its place. All right, we'll take a little break. I know already you're probably already thinking of a lot of things you want to revise. Identify something recent, past week or 2 weeks. And something that, even if you are conscious, someone who's been conscious and practicing Neville's way of thinking for a while, something that you've neglected that you really haven't done, and just one for now, because That way you don't get overwhelmed. Like a lot of times I feel overwhelmed by all the stuff that I want to imagine for or alter or whatever. But let's just pick one thing that happened. So not something that you're otherwise manifesting for, but have no evidence at this point. Just one thing that happened that you didn't like. One thing that you need to revise. Just take this time to identify that one thing and know what it is. And I mean, if I have a 5-minute break, you can get started on revising it. But right now, just identify what it is and start thinking about how you would like to do it differently. All right, I'll be right back. sorry for the breaks, but our grass pollen has been at max, and so it's not been a fun experience. I just had to make some tea and all that. All right, so when you read these strange stories that you read in the daily press, you simply ignore them. They mean nothing. Men who are calling themselves leaders, shepherds of the flock, they excommunicate. Not just one religion, all religions. The leaders take it upon themselves to excommunicate. Not knowing nothing is to be discarded. Not a thing in the world can you discard, for it is forever, but it can be pruned and made to conform to the ideal image. The man who will not revise his day either does not know it, or he has lost the vision of that life into the likeness of which it is the true labor of the Spirit of Jesus that transformed this life. So you don't discard them. In the current issue of Time magazine, there is that noble soul who is known to us as Spinoza, Baruch de Spinoza, who has given so much to the world of philosophy, so much that everyone has been enriched because he walked the earth. And here, 300 years later, the ex-premier of Israel, Ben Gurion, has asked the leading rabbis today to rescind that excommunication of 300 years ago. And they tell this noble soul today that they cannot rescind the works of their forefathers, that the curse remains forever. And you should read that silly curse as it's printed in the current issue of Time magazine. They call upon all the angels to curse him, as though angels would curse. They call upon everything to blast him. You could not walk within 4 cubits of the man's shadow. No one should talk to him. No one should show him kindness. No one should write him and never read anything he has to say. And that's 300 years ago. I don't know what the hell Spinoza did, but damn, he pissed some people off. The rabbis who so cursed him have long been forgotten. And if they do live, they only live by reason of their curse. And no one really knows who they really are. But you can't forget, if you read in this world, the works of Spinoza. Everyone in this audience possibly has used one of his phrases. Do you know it was he who said nature abhors a vacuum? Now you use it, I use it, but what is the source of it? It was Spinoza, for here was this giant of a mind that after 300 years, little minds who think they're leading the flock, they call themselves shepherds. They should go back and read well the book of Jeremiah. You shepherds who spoil my vines, and you who have come into my garden, you have taken my vines. Now it bears no grape, and it bears no leaf, and the garden of Jerusalem now has become a weed. Read it in Jeremiah, how he cries out because shepherds, who call themselves shepherds, are blind leaders of the blind. You take me this morning at my word. You owe me nothing. It costs you not a thing to come here this morning. You come, you give me your time, and I give you my time. But you go out and try it, and start this day pruning that wonderful imagination of yours. Do you know someone that is evil? Stop knowing it by bringing him before your mind's eye, and carry on with him the most wonderful conversation in the world, with a tender spirit, a loving spirit, and believe in the reality of this communion, because if you really do it, you're entering the kingdom of heaven. For you enter heaven by a loving, knowing communion with a friend. So make him a friend if he is a lovely one, no matter what he is. You can prune him, and then as you prune him, you are doing the work which you were sent to do for man, that you are that man. You are placed this day in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. Don't let it continue growing weeds in your world. I know this can get difficult, and a lot of people like to abdicate responsibility for things they've manifested, and I can understand why, because certain situations, certain behaviors people engage in, there's a lot of things that can happen to you or that you can be aware of that you just want to disclaim. You don't want to say, well, you don't want to remember when you did it. And you don't want to take responsibility for that moment when you did it and kept doing it. But here Neville says, and, take this to heart. like really think about it, you are absolutely responsible for every being you meet in this world. That is your responsibility. Um, there is a side of everyone as you pushed out that doesn't get discussed in the right way. Because we're talking about Elohim, the many who are one. But the way you're going to experience another person is based on your current body of belief. So sometimes you may not have specifically defined that this person is going to do this specific thing. You didn't, visualize them doing that. But they're acting that way because you consent that that can happen. Or you're in a state where this thing must happen to you, right? So if you're in a state of feeling disrespected, the customer service person on the phone must be a little bit curt and prickish with you because your dominant state is one of being disrespected. So a lot of times that's why these things start to happen. Now, what's kind of infuriating is when people who claim to be conscious about the law make these blind errors and say, well, like they're clearly manifesting a pattern in relationships, whether it's just things just go bad, or of fights, or of breakups, or of bad business deals, whatever that is, and it's clearly a pattern they have going on, but they don't address the pattern. They just keep insisting, oh well, whatever their negative belief is, like, oh well, all men cheat, or some people are scammers, or whatever it is. And it's one thing to do it and knowing you're doing it. I have been doing it with someone who pisses me off, but I know I'm doing it. At least know you're doing it and admit that you're doing it. Like, I know a lot of people, their definition of success is that you're going to have haters. You're going to have people coming for you if you have a certain level of success. One of my absolute heart of hearts favorite artists, the singer Morrissey, he firmly believes that, and he has been manifesting that since before I was born. But that's his style of success, is to have certain people out there who are going to be, vitriolic towards him, and that is to him a marker of the success itself. And if that's your success mindset, don't be surprised when, once you start hitting that level of success you desire for yourself, that people come out of the woodwork who don't know nothing about you really, talking all manner of shit about you. Because that's your version of success. That's what you created for yourself. So these people have to be in that state for you. That's what you've made. If you have made, this is a very common one, all people cheat on me, or someone will eventually cheat, whether it's all men are cheaters or all women are cheaters, whatever. Well, can you really be that surprised? I mean, you can be upset, but you can't be that upset when it's like the third person you've dated in the last year has ended up cheating on you. Can you really be that surprised when you've been so insistent that this is the way reality works? And I'm just giving very boring and common examples, but that's the behavior that you're creating in other people. There are infinite versions of them. You could simply say that other people celebrate your success and firmly believe that. And even people who you don't even they're, as far as they're not, they don't know anything about what you do. They just like you. And they just like what you do. They don't even know what you do, but they like you for it. I'm talking about in these situations where it's people who are going to write these kind of vitriolic opinion pieces about Morrissey, to go back to that example. They could, by the very same level of engagement, write a fluff piece about how great his new album was last year, just as easily, with just as much knowledge about anything about him, really, because that's their equivalent level of knowledge. The person that writes the piece about how awful he is, using a misquote from another interview he gave, could just as easily have written a very surface level piece about how great his album was, and they only listened to it like half of it once. Okay, that's my point. There is like that. That infinite realities are available to you. The person has to show up based on your state. I mean, the simplest one there is like the person who's disrespectful and curt and kind of twattish to you, the customer service person, could just as easily been super polite and nice and helpful to you. Now, what I've noticed with that is that can be very variable and based on my moods. I have literally seen cashiers mirror my mood. Now, that's an assumption I have that happens, right? You could also have a very strong, deep set assumption that people in your reality are, polite no matter what, even if you're having a bad day. But my current assumption is that people's moods mirror mine, and that has been the experience I've had. Not just with shallow interactions but with friends and family members where, I'll be having persistent sleep issues and they will have the same sleep issues. And it's like whenever they tell me that, I'm just thinking like, I don't usually tell them, and I'm thinking, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm screwing up your sleep too. But I mean the depth and gravity of this statement is one that gets glossed over, and it's simply because, look, being God is not fucking easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Like, I mean, people can have this perspective of, well, being God, it should be easy as fuck. Why? You created an incredibly complex world. I mean, I personally would love it to be simpler because I would like my life to be simpler. But did you really think it was going to be that easy? That simple? Like, really? Because people got a lot of fucking problems. You made a lot of fucked up shit. You got a lot of things to fix, right? And this is really me talking to me right now. It's like, you got a lot of things to fix. There's a lot of people need to be revised. Like, do you really think it was going to be that easy? Like, as a trader, it's a whole world of responsibility here. So if you want to live a great life, have all that success, enjoy everything, you can't just let everybody around you fall to shit when you created it that way anyway. You need to raise them all up. Or just shift to Hogwarts, whatever you want to do. But really, are you going to sit around here, even if you don't know you're God the Father, but if you're just going to sit around saying, I'm God in my reality, well, why God can't help their best friend? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you really going to abdicate responsibility for that? If you've moved in mine and they haven't caught up, I understand that frustration. But if you've never moved in mind, can you really sit there mentally bitching about your friend who bitches at you about all their problems when you haven't even bothered to hear another conversation? Like, you're supposed to be God. Come on, start acting like God. Okay. That was a very random impromptu rant, but I hope it's appreciated in some way. Just like the teacher we told you of who took this little child that was just about to be expelled. No, the child is not expelled because she heard what you are hearing this morning. So she brought before her mind's eye the child that the principal, the psychiatrist, and all the faculty had agreed unanimously to expel her on her 16th birthday, for she was rude, she was crude, she was unethical, and she went home on a Sunday night. The kid was all of those things. But the teacher went home on a Sunday night and brought that child before her mind's eye and communed with her and saw in her a tender child, a considerate child, a loving child. The next day, Monday, in class, she expressed all the kindness of that revision of the night before, and 10 days later, when it was seen and witnessed by all the faculty and the psychiatrist, another meeting was called, and they repealed their verdict of 10 days before, and the child is not expelled. She still sits in the George Washington High School in New York City, which is considered an excellent school, and so there she is, with no black marks against her because one teacher sat in the audience as you are here, and she believed what I hope everyone here will believe, and she redeemed a branch of her own tree. She didn't realize the child was herself. She saw up to that moment all the children that she taught in pure objectivity. Blind man sees the world objective to himself, something detached from himself. When man begins to awake, he sees everything subjectively related. Everything he meets is part of himself. And what he does not now understand, still he knows it is related by affinity to some as yet unrealized force in his own being. So he doesn't discard it. He knows his life is the process by which he will redeem it, and he redeems it by using the pruning shears of revision. So I feel if after these 50 years of walking this earth, that this is what that lady saw when I was but 7, I could really close the eye on 3 dimensions at any moment, knowing you will not disprove it. You may never use them, but you will never disprove this art of revision. And any man who will try it will prove it to his own satisfaction, that he can rise beyond the wildest dreams of men, and rising, he awakens the spirit of forgiveness. He will rise in the early stages in the successful venture. He will increase his income. He will do all these things. But he will realize after a little while that wasn't the purpose. They were only toys to tickle him, toys to amuse him, until he awoke within himself the Spirit of Jesus. Then he sees an entirely different mission, not the amassing of wealth, but the redeeming of society, the redeeming of every man in the world. He comes to do his Father's will, and we are told in the 6th chapter of John, that is my Father's will, that all that he has given me, I should lose nothing, but I should raise it up again. Lose nothing. No, you don't excommunicate, you don't rub out. You simply raise it up again, and as you raise it up, you raise yourself up, and the journey is forever. You are moving up an infinite vertical line in your own wonderful imagination, and you can only move up by lifting others up. Blind men think they can save themselves, and because they think they can save themselves and discard the rest. The blind man also said this hundreds of years ago. He saved as he saved others. Himself he cannot save. I say to you that it's a false statement. It was put into the mouth of the Pharisee, who put into the mouth of the Sanhedrin, the leaders who thought they were leaders, but I will tell you, a man saves himself by, and only by, the saving of his fellow man. There is no other way of saving self, other than by saving the real self. And every man is rooted in you who observes men. And so don't discard, raise them up, prune the tree, and become the real gardener in the garden of God. Yeah, this is the whole "are you feeding your pig" thing. It's the story of Job, the idea that Job didn't get justice until he started legitimately doing for others, not trying to take action on their behalf, but praying for them, which is mentally, prayer is seeing the person having what they desire. So yeah, this is an interesting part of revision, is that when the way Neville discusses it, is he is primarily encouraging you to do it on behalf of other people, because they're not other people, they're an aspect of you. But still, if you think about it, think about how inseparable it really is. Like, if you did have a fight with someone that you care about, or maybe you don't care about them, but you work with them every day. Like, you don't have a depth of emotion for them, but you encounter them all the time, and you're regularly interacting with them. Well, you really don't want to create any kind of intensity of ill will between you and them, and certainly if it's someone you love, you didn't want to have the fight. You didn't want to disagree and have it elevate to that level of anger between you. So when you revise that, and you change that conversation. You remove all the anger, and if there's anything actually hurtful said, you delete that, and instead replace it with something that was calm and agreeable and just a nice, normal conversation that y'all would have. Um, well, wouldn't they want that too? You know, I mean, usually when people are angry and fighting all the time, it's someone that's in a lot of pain who would rather not be in pain. So when you're revising, you're going to automatically lift them out of a lot of things that they don't want to be in, you know? Take anything. You have a child today. We all took the request this morning. There were dozens and dozens of requests this morning. Um, Everyone must be answered. None must be discarded. Don't say one is impossible. The one with the child today, I don't know what was going on there. If he was talking about, if he's referencing back the lady who revised the student. It said there was requests. They must not have included that in the lecture. He must have read out stuff that people requested for before the lecture, and they didn't include it in this transcript. Everyone must be answered. None must be discarded. Don't say one is impossible. There is nothing impossible to your imagination, and your imagination is Christ Jesus. With him, all things are possible. Use him, stir him, wake him from his sleep. He has been sleeping through the centuries because he has slept. He has dreamed into being all these strange, misshaped states. For the world only bears witness of the use or misuse of imagination. As we are told, he is the only thing in the world. What is the only thing in the world? Your imagination. For it is the habitation of every created thing, and by it all things are made, and without it is nothing made that is made. So use it wisely, use it lovingly, and any time you use your imagination lovingly on behalf of another, you are at that moment literally mediating God to man. Imagination is the redemptive power of the world, and you are actually mediating God to man by using it in a loving, wonderful way. I just want to emphasize these last bits. Just because I do think a lot of contemporary people want to talk about manifestation and imagination like a parlor trick, and they lose sight of why this works, how it works, you know, what this reality actually is. And I mean, if you haven't started having like vision dreams or other types of mystical experiences yet, just make it clear to you everything here is dead. Like Sixth Sense moment, an actual Sixth Sense moment, you're dead. Everyone you know is dead. Nothing here is alive except one thing: God, who is in you and who represents to you as imagination. That's the only living force in the world, is the God in you. God the Father in you who created this world. Everything here is dead. It's all bones, which is the law, which is belief, and dust, which you can't see because it's infinitely small. But I saw it represented in a dream. Everything here is you instantaneously animating this dust. The force of life in you is constantly moving this dust around. It's wild. And honestly, since having that dream, I'm a little bit pissed that I don't have faster manifestations. Because after seeing how it was happening, I was like, well, this is all boom, 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 boom. Like, it's just, there is no delay on anything. There is no delay. Those delays are our creation. But yeah, everything here is dead except the God in you who's alive, and it animates absolutely everything. And the way you control it is by creating things in your imagination, creating scenes. They express in the scene of space, or you can use just words, but for the most part, visualizing and using your senses does seem to be the pathway to really expressing yourself imaginatively. So when you revise your day, that's God in action. However you revise your day. And Neville encourages to obviously be loving, but the fact is you can mediate the wrath of God to anybody. You can do that. You're not prohibited from that. Nothing is ever prohibited from you. Okay? So you can use this however you want. That's always up to you. That is always your prerogative. And the fact is, when you've been asleep for a long time, like maybe you're in your 40s or 50s finding this, or maybe in your 70s finding Neville. Or like I kind of felt like I've tried to revise that I found Neville earlier because I felt even by the time I found him in my 30s, it was a little bit later than I would have liked. Even though I realize now I was trying to give myself these messages for a long time, it's like because you were asleep for so long and probably in a lot of really crappy states for a while, you've already created a lot of things that are unwanted through unintentionally putting all any kind of like anger or anxiety or any of those negative type things that were going on in your mind out into the world. So you've already done that. Just by realizing like, oh, we've already tried being angry at everybody. It didn't really upgrade the world in the best way. So now you might want to move into more, at least neutral directions when it comes to your revisions. I'll just scoot over to a bit before we close out. Because I already ranted a bunch today. Like, this is a pretty rant-heavy day. If anyone finds this on YouTube in the future, who is someone who's been watching those reality-shifting subliminals, and you decided to watch my whole lecture, A, let me apologize because I'm not on my best game today because of these seasonal allergies. And B, if you really like what you heard here, you don't have to come back. But I do want you to do one thing. Revise something. Anything. And something fairly recent. Something in the last week, 2 weeks max. Pick it, revise it. If it works, I want you to come back and watch my streams. If it doesn't work, keep revising it. Or at least revise it until you feel better about it. And if you don't get an effect like fairly quickly within 2 weeks to a month, start picking some other things to revise. Eventually something is going to totally conform to exactly what you saw. It might even be the first thing, it might be the second thing. And at that point, keep going with what Neville is talking about. Keep practicing the things he encourages. Try to get to a point where you are revising every day. But for now, pick that one thing. Pick that one conversation you didn't like, incident you wish hadn't happened. No matter what it is, no matter how many people were concerned, how many people it would affect if it was altered, pick the one thing and revise it. For those people who are new to this. For everybody else who has been at manifesting for a while, look, this is Neville's encouragement that revision is the way to go. That's the way, if you feel like you're in a Job-like situation, to move forward and get the things you want. So if you've already tried everything else, why not try this? Why not try revising, and primarily revising to help other people? Now look, if you have already imagined for someone and you have done like what is your best, most effective techniques for them, that's fine. You probably don't need to revise the most recent interaction related to what you want to see for them. But just remind yourself that, no, you've already got the new job. You're already married, or you're already doing better, or whatever. Just, if you have a little quick anchor scene, go to that for them. You don't necessarily have to revise the most recent time they were telling you they can't find a job or whatever. But if you haven't moved, especially if people are, introducing things that you haven't imagined for yet, take some time and do something for them, anything. So you could do a traditional revision where you're changing a conversation you have with them, or a text, or some, if it was in person, whatever. Um, or you can also do something we did a couple streams ago that I really liked, which is literally visualize going to their garden. Like you live in the giant Garden of Eden, and they have their section of the garden, and you go to their section of the garden and literally pull out weeds with them. Weed the things that need help. If there's any spots in their garden where things are dying, like visualize hitting it with this like amazingly powerful water that instantly rejuvenates anything. And then just kind of put that water everywhere in their garden where like their trees start blossoming, all their flowers start blooming. Like give yourself some serious pollen allergies. But like the other words, mentally, physically help them improve their garden. Like imagine that if you don't want to do little scenes. But so the assignment there is for people who are advanced manifestors, pick 3 people to do this with. Where you've been neglecting seeing them in better states, pick 3, either, revise things that have happened, like things they've said. Mostly I'm thinking people who, they're your friend or family member, and they have a certain goal they haven't met yet. So now is the time to see them having it, and you can do it directly with the scene or by doing this sort of garden method that I really like. 3 people. 3 people I'm going to do that with. So yeah, to review, for people who are brand new to manifesting, pick literally one thing in the last 2 weeks and revise it. All right. And then for people who are advanced, you're more advanced or intermediate manifestors, pick 3 people in your life where there's some lack. They're experiencing lack, or maybe you guys have had an argument or something. There's some kind of disagreement between you, whatever. 3 people in your life that need an improved experience of reality, and revise on their behalf. Or imagine visiting their garden and tending it with them. Okay? So those are your assignments. Should you choose to, those are your missions. Should you choose to accept them, I will be back Thursday. I don't know what lecture I'm going to do yet. I don't know. I kind of been feeling like I might want to do like a really weird one, like one where, there's a lot of discussion of vision and it kind of doesn't make sense. Because look, let's be real. Neville did those kind of lectures where he kind of just says, like, he kind of just reads out 2 people's dreams and then tells you about a vision he had and includes one little concise how-to on the law, and that's it. That's the lecture. I might read one of those because eventually I'm going to have to start getting to those. And so I might do one of those. If not, I'll do some other ones that have examples in them, because I know people like examples. The great thing about examples is they usually remind you how simple using the law can be. You can seem overwhelmed that there's a lot of things in the world that need to be fixed, but the method to be applied is usually pretty simple. All right, everybody, that's it for today. Thursday, probably 6 p.m. It might be later. I still haven't picked my times. Actually, honestly, it might be earlier that day because I've got to get up really early on Friday. So I might do 4 p.m. on Thursday. But either way, the VODs will be up, and then Saturday I'll be doing a normal time. All right. Y'all have a good day. Have fun revising. All right. All right, I'll see y'all again next time. Peace.